Welcome to Houston Sports Talk with your host, Robert Land.
All right, that's the way to do it. Texans taking care of business. We never had any doubt. I mean, come on, guys. There was no doubt. Texans were going to take it. Thanks for checking into the best Houston sports podcast, our live Texans-Chargers postgame show, part of the National Bleav Network. And joining me is contributor Tom Chavarria, co-host of the Bullpen podcast. Tom, it's one of the weirdest, strangest, turn of events, turn of emotions. Like all of a sudden, everything changed on a dime. This is crazy.
Unbelievable game for Texans fans. You know, I tweeted it out somewhere in the middle. I was like, this game is drunk. It had everything, literally everything you could ask for in a football game. You got on both sides of the ball. It was nuts. And we're here to break it down.
Yeah, we want to hear your comments too. We're already seeing them come in. Great win by the Texans. Vince says, Third Ward HTX, salute, go Texans. H-Town Bop, sheesh. I guess that sums it up in sort of a word there. Just crazy stuff. And we got to get into, a ton of stuff with CJ Stroud. It's going to start off and it's not going to sound great. And then all of a sudden you're like, wait a second, maybe Stroud, maybe this team, maybe all this stuff. I mean, let's go Pittsburgh, Vince. I mean, we're rooting for the Steelers all of a sudden. I'm not even used to doing that in my life, but I guess we're rooting for the Steelers because matchups and who you want to play next week. And it should be something to keep an eye on as the weekend progresses, I guess, and see what the Texans are going to do. Do you have any preference at this point, Tom, who you want this Texans to see?
If this defense plays like this, CJ Stroud plays like that, it does not matter. Bring all of them because that's a Super Bowl caliber defense, and that is elite Super Bowl caliber quarterbacking play from CJ Stroud at moments. Obviously, we'll talk about all the moments where you're kind of like, what are we doing here? But I'm really proud of this team. Really awesome way to finish a game. Like anytime when, you're the team that's like attacking the other team who's desperate to try to get back into a game and converting fourth downs to really seal it, you can't ask for much more.
Yeah, Josh says, drunk. This game was hammered. Elite defense except for one massive play that truly made me question everything, and then continued dominance after that. We're going to get to all of it. We're going to talk about this whole thing. We're going to break it all down, dissect it play by play, and get into what can be better going towards next week. But they're playing next week. That's all we care about. That's all we know. And first possession, Chargers just, they dissect the Texans until Fatukasi, who'd missed 6 of 7 of the last Texans games. Good to have him back. He shut the door on 3rd and 1. Toa also got a nice push there, Tom, I thought. Really good play by both of those guys. And that was it's a big thing right there, what they did.
Look, injuries happen to everybody. No team is injury-free. And if they are, it's a miracle. So we have said on different points in time, if this team was whole, they would look so good. And early on, I think there was a gelling period. There was running plays that the Chargers were able to get to. Ladd McConkey is an absolute menace. That guy is going to be good for a long time. And you just really wondered if the Texans could stop this team. And then Foley, who we've missed this big chunk, was in the middle doing his job. And the bend but don't break was so huge early.
Texans offense, their first play. And it didn't start off well for the Texans. Mechie stripped after the catch. So pressure on the Texans defense right after that. But a big sack by Will Anderson and Mario Edwards. Then a drop pass by the Chargers. Disley helps avoid total disaster, Tom. We're going to come back to Disley later in the game. It could have been much worse, but, they escaped with a 6-0 deficit, which, considering they had run exactly one offensive play, it was 6-0, and it could have been just that was a disaster that was really avoided there.
Yeah, definite momentum swing with them being able to hold them to 2 field goals. I feel like those were wins for the Texans, who were really struggling to find footing. I don't know if you saw the pregame video with JJ and Will Anderson, it really felt like a passing of the torch to me. And Will Anderson showed up in a big way today. So I felt like he played his best JJ Watt type game. He came off the edge all day, and them holding them to 6 points really allowed CJ to kind of figure it out.
Yeah, he had that uncovered sack. I don't see them ever leaving JJ just uncovered on the edge. Like, hey, just go ahead and take your shot. Let's see what happens. But
I guarantee you they'll never do that to Will Anderson again. That's the one. That's all he's getting.
Yeah. Wow. Second Texans possession, not much better than the first. 2 Mixon runs go nowhere. CJ escapes third down pressure, throws a horrible pass, could have been intercepted. The Texans special teams commit a dumb penalty, which we've sort of highlighted this year. It's not been good. Chris Boyd, his sixth penalty of the season. He's number 2 on the Texans behind Laremy Tunsil in penalties. But Tom, Will Anderson, you said it, another big play, gets Herbert's arm on a third down throw. I mean, Will just kept coming time after time.
Yeah, I think leading into the game, the real concern was, could the Texans offensive line block for CJ Stroud? And by the end of this game, it was, oh my God, the Chargers cannot block for Justin Herbert, who's had all the time, all season long. And he's not a very mobile guy. So he hadn't he'd thrown 3 interceptions all season long, had so much protection. And the Texans were just relentless getting to him all day long.
D'Angelo Ross deflects a punt, but the Chargers catch a break because the ball rolls all the way to the 30. Stroud hits Schultz and Woods for 2 first downs, but Bosa beats your Pro Bowl left tackle Tunsil for a sack. 3 Texans possessions, 41 total yards by my count at this point. Lassiter, though, makes a good play on third down, forcing a punt. Texans' next possession. All right, let's see if they're going to do it this time. Stroud, strange throw on second down to Nico that's nearly intercepted, then an awful throw to Mechie on third down. What was that, Tom? It was a jump ball into triple coverage. Like, I don't get it.
Yeah, I felt like CJ looked a little sped up, and I think he was trying to force the ball in some spots. What I really liked, and I think this was a credit to Bobby Slowick, was early in the game, the throws that you talked about, the quick hitters, that was always going to be available to them. And I think that's something that we've seen CJ avoid early in the season, to look for the explosives, to look for Nico, to look for Tank Deep. And I think if you can take 8 or 9 yards to a tight end, whether it's Stover or any one of the other tight ends, I'm struggling with names right now. Those guys that's free money. And then it's 2nd and 2 and 2nd and 1. And then you have the whole playbook open. And I just feel like CJ did a really good job of keeping things manageable. And as we talk about further, I think that's what helped him later. And
he caught some breaks, because at this point he could have easily had 3 interceptions. Actually, would have been 2, because 2 were on the same drive, but just 1 at this point. He was making throws like he had a concussion. I was wondering what was going on with this guy. And then luckily Herbert returns the favor. Terrible throw into double coverage across the field, intercepted by Lassiter. But does it matter? Nope. Second down sack kills the next drive. Tell me if you've heard this before, Tom. The guard and tackle do a poor job communicating on a stunt, and CJ Stroud pays the price. Titus Howard, Laremy Tunsil. I mean, it's just fill in the blank with the Texans offensive line at times on these stunts.
The funny thing is all season long we blamed the linemen and said, well, Kenyon Green, Juice Scruggs, Jarrett Patterson, you can't get beat on these. And then today we see the 2 best offensive linemen the Texans have get beat on it the same way. I really hope they look into who I think is Strausser is the name. I really hope they look into upgrading from that. This is something that you shouldn't see those 2 guys who blocked really good up until this point struggle with.
Yeah, and Titus, we're going to come back to Titus's day, because it did not go well. 5 drives for 70 yards to start the game, 2 turnovers. Nico with 1 catch. Mixon had 6 yards. Pathetic. It was all bad at this point. But the Texans D does it again. After a tripping penalty by Titus on second down, though, Stroud fumbles the snap on third down, and it's like, oh my God, it's one thing after another. And then, oh my God, Tom, oh my God, it's the biggest play of the half, because you would explain what Bobby Slowick drew up there, that was a brilliant design. The old fumble roll out 34-yard complete. Like what in the world? This has got to be the most crazy, unbelievable turnaround on one play of an entire team I've ever seen.
The scramble red alert play to the right needs to be renamed to CJ, because it seems like he does this once every 3 or 4 games. And credit, which nobody will talk about, credit to Xavier Hutchinson, because when they show the play from the back after the fact, Hutchinson realizes that CJ's in trouble and he immediately darts across the field, where Nico keeps going down the field. Hutch was his only receiver that came back to help him, and that's what enabled CJ to find him, because he came across the field. He was on the other sideline. So it was a great play by Xavier Hutchinson, great play by CJ Stroud. I really think that play, like, it got him into the game. He was like, okay, I've had enough of this. It's time to go to work. And from that point on, he really did. Even though he made mistakes, I felt like there was a different demeanor to him. It was more confident. It was more with asserted, like, aggression, where sometimes you see him be kind of timid and kind of like ho-hum. Oh no, this is a different CJ Stroud, and it showed.
Unbelievable. I mean, I don't even know like how to explain it, but it literally like brought the crowd to life. It brought, everybody to life. It brought the team to life. It brought CJ to life. They catch a break on the next play. Schultz looks like he fumbles it, but the refs say incomplete pass, by the letter of their law, which is always weird and I don't always agree with, but I'll take it this time. Thank you very much. They get the ball. So next play, huge one to Nico to the 12, and 3rd and 11. CJ, perfect touchdown throw to Nico in stride on the slant. And what a turnaround, Tom. This is like magic. All of a sudden, it's like there was oxygen out of nowhere.
I think this was a great job by Bobby Slowick. And I know nobody wants to talk about him, but to put Nico in the middle of the field and to give those routes for CJ to work to, where the middle of the field was open all day long. It was like you kept waiting for them to get Nico Collins involved, and Nico Collins was flexed out wide when they were funneling everything to the middle. Once they made the change to bring Nico to the middle of the field, that's when you saw him make some incredible plays and have huge chunk plays. And I think that's just the diagram, how they drew it up. So credit there. CJ was like, this is my guy. I'm going to go there. And it was good from that point on.
Yeah, really good point on Nico and how they utilized him. I like you were saying before, I agreed. Just, the quick hitters, the middle of the field stuff was great. Josh points out that Stroud stat line the first half, 14 for 23, 180 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. So, it looked terrible for most of the first half. But as we're about to find out, Stroud's not done in the first half. Hang on tight. And before we go on, just a quick reminder, if you enjoy Houston Sports Talk, tell your friends about us and share our links on your social media. If there's a Texans angle you want us to discuss, let us know in the YouTube comments, whether you're watching live or on the replay. To support us, give that quick thumbs up. It helps the old algorithm. And of course, if you haven't done so, subscribe on YouTube and listen on the go with your favorite podcast app. Back to the action. Chargers last shot of the half. Herbert throws McConkey, but he overthrows him. He was wide open down the field. Texans, again, a little bit of luck their way at this point. Still 27 seconds for the Texans. A chance to get in field goal range. I'm wishing, I'm hoping, I'm dreaming. And then Stroud, the scramble of his career, the scramble of the year, 27 yards. And then, Tom, I just wanted to ask you, kind of what was your thought about them sort of playing it safe after that? It felt like, okay, they got the momentum, and then they run it with Ogunbowale, the short slant to Nico. Could they have been more aggressive there? Should they have been more aggressive there with the momentum?
So first off, the play before that you talked about where Herbert misses McConkey, that's directly tied to the pressure that he received in his face. I think Daniil Hunter was coming. Daniil was off the edge, and I think that sped him up, and he had to go quick, and he overthrew it, which you got to give credit to the D-line for doing that. If he's got time to set his feet, he probably hits McConkey there. He's a very accurate quarterback. With the play you're talking about with the run, this is something I've been asking for CJ to do for a while, whether it be the sneaks or an actual designed run, which we saw. I think this is something that he's leaving these yards on the field. And I get it. Player safety is big. Trevor Lawrence gets knocked out. You see Anthony Richardson take hits. You see all these quarterbacks take hits, but the good ones are able to run the football and protect themselves. And I think CJ can do that. And I feel like if he adds this element to his game, there's no limit to how deadly he can be, because you have to respect the fact that he can go with his legs. 2 or 3 times today, we're going to talk about it, where he made that decision. All season long, I think he's had the opportunity. The play that you talked about earlier, where he threw the ball where he was concussed, he could have ran that ball and probably got the first down. There was all the room. The broadcast was talking about, man, I wonder if CJ should have ran that. He's always been really hesitant. This is the first time all season I've really seen him decide he was going to be a runner, and it was huge. Not to cut you off, sorry. I didn't have a problem with them being selective with getting a field goal because they were getting the ball to start the second half. This was gonna make it a 4-point game. I thought that was smart.
I was going to say, on the decision to start running the football, you sometimes wonder if he's been playing it safe the whole year. He tried not to get hurt, making sure he's making the right play as a quarterback and, keeping himself healthy. And once the playoffs, everything's on the line. Maybe that was a reason. Maybe Joe Mixon got in his ear. Mixon's leadership, I think he's said as much that he wanted to see him run more. So just a couple of things to keep in the back of your head. Fairbairn kicks the field goal, and in one of the craziest first half turnarounds we've ever seen, there they are, 10-6, great stuff. And by the way, CJ Stroud, like I said, 27-yard run, biggest of the year, and that doubled the Texans' first half rushing yards. That one run doubled their first half rushing yards. So let's go to the third quarter. Texans trying to keep momentum. Stroud, he does a hell of a job finding Nico on a crosser, beating a blitz. Nico does Nico stuff, fights it all the way down to the 24. You think, okay, let's put the nail in the coffin. But Tom, the Chargers, give them credit. They were stripping the Texans all day, getting their hands in on the receivers over and over again. They got Mixon for his first fumble in over 1,000 touches.
Now, I'm glad you brought this play up, because this play was a hot button topic on Twitter. Everybody lost their mind because it looked like it was setting up to be a halfback pass. And if he had the halfback pass, he was going to throw it. And if not, he was going to run it. And to everybody who's upset, you beg for Bobby Slowick to be more like Ben Johnson and be creative. This was an option to be creative. If Nico's wide open and he throws that touchdown, we're going, wow, look at Bobby Slowick going and making a play. But, credit to the Chargers. The Chargers are a really good defense. It wasn't the first time they made a strip. They've been stripping the ball all day long. I thought Joe Mixon did a great job of going, okay, I don't have it. It was one-on-one. I don't have it. Tuck it and run it. He just made a good play. I can't fault Bobby for calling a play that if it works, it's genius. And he gave the option, right? It wasn't like it was like throw it or else. It wasn't like he just sat back there. No, Mixon made the choice to run the ball and just got stripped. I don't know what the postgame said. I'd be curious to see if anybody asked him about that play. I thought it was a really good play. I saw Twitter torch Bobby Slowick, get him up out of here. He's got to go. All the momentum gone. I didn't agree, but I understand it.
Yeah, three things that you have to remember in that particular play. Number one, Joe Mixon. Is there anybody that you trust as much as CJ Stroud right now than Joe Mixon to make the right decision? Number two, like I said, Joe Mixon does not fumble the ball. So the fact that they turned the ball over wasn't about what Bobby Slowick did wrong. It was give these guys credit. I mean, it wasn't just that they stripped Mixon. They stripped Mechie. They stripped Dalton Schultz. They stripped Cade Stowe. I mean, they were getting everybody in this game, one way or the other. So, I mean, give the other guys credit sometimes. They made a play right there. And Joe Mixon, might have been a little bit loose with the ball, whatever. But, I can't be mad at Joe Mixon, especially after what we're going to find out the rest of this game, which we're going to get to. What happens after that, Stingley commits an unnecessary face mask penalty, which put the Chargers past midfield. You're like, uh-oh, how's this going to backfire? But Stingley makes up for it after Aziz comes up with a huge third down stick. And on 4th and 2, Tom, picture perfect coverage by Stingley on Johnston.
Yeah, I mean, Derek Stingley Jr. is all pro for a reason. I think that everybody that had any doubts about Stingley, this was definitely a coming out party in a postseason setting. I truly Bleav Stingley is going to start to garner the respect of other offensive coordinators. They're not going to try this dude. They're just not going to go over there. It doesn't make any sense. It's not worth it. And this dude is as locked down as you can be right now in football. You can go out there and try to name me better guys if you want. Some people say Patrick Surtain in Denver, and that's fine. Maybe I'm biased, but Stingley's got the picks to prove it. So
what do you see up on the screen from Vince? What does he say?
Vince is right. I agree with Vince. Sauce who? I don't even know who Sauce is. Can somebody tell me?
Yeah, if you're listening on audio, he says Stingley officially shut down all this Sauce is better talk. And Scott backs up what you said, Tom. You know, he says that Stingley showed us why he's first team All-Pro. Just incredible stuff. We're going to talk more Stingley as the game goes. He's not done. We are very early in the Stingley conversation. Then we have a good Mixon run that puts the Texans in the red zone. But Titus with his second penalty of the game, an obvious holding penalty. This was Titus's first ever playoff game, by the way, and it was not good overall for a number of reasons. And we're going to come back to Titus in a second. Looked like Stroud threw an interception, but it was overturned. And then Mixon picks up a personal foul on that, which is all kind of weird because it all happened because they were wrong about the play being an interception. But anyway, then Blake Fisher gets a holding penalty. Luckily, though, Stroud able to get the Texans back in field goal range. They get 3, Tom, but this offense, they like to make life harder for this team. Oh, my goodness.
You know, again, I love that CJ was taking shots, right? We question CJ from time to time about being, too, I guess I say
overly
patient,
aggressive. No, I think he's aggressive. I think Stroud, especially this year, he's been aggressive because he's gotten some interceptions that I think there were passes he just wouldn't have thrown last year.
Yeah, I mean, he saw Schultz one-on-one and said, "My guy's going to win." Now he needed to throw a better ball. I think he underthrew him a little bit, and that allowed Derwin James to make a play, kind of the same way Lassiter made a play on Herbert. But to our luck, Derwin James couldn't hold on to the ball, complete the play to go to the ground. I do not understand how you reset the clock. You reset everything, but that penalty, we can't reset that. And then I also saw a picture of the penalty. The guy was looking to make a hit on Mixon, right? The guy's running at Mixon. Mixon just defends himself, I think, with his shoulder, but we're going to call the personal foul because he hits him. It's kind of like a crackback block, but it's like, it's going the wrong way though. So I don't understand that at all.
Yeah, a lot of this crackback block crap. Some of it has just gotten way out of hand. It was basically a play, I think, that was designed to protect quarterbacks, and now we're talking about protecting everybody. Like offensive linemen can't protect themselves, like 300-pound guys can't protect themselves or something like that. If you're going at a guy's knees or his head, I get it. But if you hit a guy square in the chest because you're trying to, make a play after an interception or a turnover, I'm sorry, I don't get it. But let me just also point out, and even without Mixon, lots of penalties at this point. We're at 8 penalties for 86 yards in the third quarter. This is the team that's top 5 in penalties in Denico's first 2 seasons. So last year and this year, they're in the top 5. Discipline is officially a Denico issue. And you can't make a Super Bowl run if you keep doing this every single week. You are not the 1978 Raiders that's, can get away with this kind of whatever, one of those teams that kind of gets away with it. But anyways, let's go back to some good news. Denico Autry, he's alive. He's alive. He body slams Herbert. I mean, just big play by Denico, more Denico a little bit later, I should say. And then a 3-and-out. For the Texans, but they can't do any better. So they do their own 3-and-out. Can the Chargers get it going? In a word, nope. Because Herbert overthrows McConkey, hands a pick 6 gif to everybody's favorite safety on the Texans, Eric Murray. Eric Murray he knew where to be. He was wide open. He called for it. He's like, "Give me the ball, Justin. Give me the ball."
Look. Eric Murray has caught so much smoke from everybody, and rightfully so. Today, got to leave him alone. Today, he played his tail off. He was everywhere. The guy played a hell of a game. Got no beef with Eric Murray today.
Yeah, Josh, we can get back to your offensive line quote there. I want to maybe get back to that a little bit later, but Tom, Herbert had thrown 3 interceptions all season, but the Texans say we can beat that in 4 quarters. 4 interceptions, unreal. Stingley, his first of 2 right here. And I would not want to be Disley looking at the film of this and trying to talk to his teammates, because for the second time in the game, the ball goes right through his hands. Stingley gets it. And Dalton Schultz, he's looking a little better after watching old Disley, isn't he? You're not as worried about Dalton Schultz's hands after watching Disley, are you?
I mean, you should appreciate Dalton Schultz if you saw Will Disley, because sure-handed tight ends are not something that are just readily available. You definitely appreciate the ones you got when you have them. This is a thing where I imagine the Chargers are going to go and try to find another tight end in the offseason because of how bad this went, because there was a couple game-changing drives that Will Disley affected.
On a second one at the 4, looked like the Texans were going to get a quick TD. There was a strange clock stoppage that probably turns into a Mixon first down. The refs, it seemed like, were actively after they had the Texans in the cover or something like that. I don't like they're the Chargers in the cover. I don't know what was going on there. For some reason, though, and this is, I hate doing this on a day like this, but Slowick, he changed his mind to run the football right there, decides to throw the ball on second one. Mixon misses a block, causing a sack. It ends up in a field goal. And I hate to nitpick, Tom, but just run the ball twice on second one at the 4. If nothing else, you take off 2 minutes off the clock with a 14-point lead. Why not just run the ball? And Joe Mixon had just started getting rolling right there.
Here's the problem, though. All season long, he's ran the ball, and people said, why are you running the damn ball?
Well, I know, but it's called situational football. And I'm talking about Joe Mixon had just gotten you 9 yards. Like, when you're not running the ball and then he runs the ball and runs the ball and runs the ball and you're not doing anything, that's when people get mad. When you run the ball well and then Mixon gets it like 9 yards and it's a second one and you're at the 4-yard line and you're up by 14 and you're trying to run out the clock in the 4th quarter, run the ball, run it.
I understand. But I understand the idea of trying to play aggressive, throw the football. You disagreed with their call to run the ball before the half to try to get in a better field goal position. And then it's kind of like, he was damned if he did, damned if he didn't. In my opinion, I didn't mind the play call. I understood it. I understand running the ball too, obviously, but that's a really good defense on the other side, that when they knew the Texans were going to run the ball, they were in the backfield all day.
Keep the comments coming, guys. Still want to hear from you guys. This game gets nuttier and nuttier after Anderson and Edwards back-to-back sacks, and you're like, oh my God, it's over with. We are in total control. There it is. And then Justin Herbert says, let's try this big play thing against the Texans. We hear that stuff works. He hits McConkey 86 yards. Kalen Bullock, I noticed, just a rookie mistake, thinking he had the interception, not noticing that McConkey's like right there. But Tom, give Denico Autry and D'Angelo Ross their flowers. Throw the guys their flowers, because Autry, a second huge play, the extra point deflection. Then Ross, his second huge play, deflected the punt earlier and then returns this one for 2. And it just, when the Chargers had momentum, those 2 guys say, no momentum right here.
I love that this happened and the Texans won, because the play you talked about with McConkey is 100% a D'Amico Ryans coaching point, because Kalen Bullock takes the worst possible route you can take. And literally he's played phenomenal all season long, and everyone's going to give him his flowers. But this is a time where you can go, look, we got to get better, baby, because with that lead, Kalen Bullock has to know, I can't ball hawk here. I have to keep McConkey on the field. I have to keep him out of the end zone. That's all I have to do. And he takes a horrible route trying to pick that ball off, and that turns into a touchdown. Now, the 2-point, oh man, was that awesome, because as soon as they score, you go, here we go. And then the 2-point kind of restored order for a lot of Texan fans because it then made it, I think it made it a 12-point game, 14-point game, something like that. So that kind of, kept the gap enough. But absolutely cannot happen there. That's definitely a rookie mistake that we hope we don't see going forward. And then Denico Autry, this is what they brought him in for. The guy was on long in the tooth, an older dude. I know you were critical of him earlier. Like, look, they paid you this money. We need to see it. If he saved it all up to be ready to do this in the playoffs, worth every penny. Because having those monsters on the outside and then having Foley and Mario and Denico up the middle, that's an awesome defensive line that gave Herbert fits all day long.
Yeah, that's exactly what you wanted Denico for, is to give you that third pass rusher with the two big guys on the outside. And then what do you do if you're the other team? And it's exactly what you needed. It was still a 2-score game after the 2-point conversion. That wasn't going to change things. But my feeling was it just got the excitement back in the building after a big play that could have taken the air out. It got the fans going. It kept them going. So that was big. Texans' next possession on 4th and 1, which, again, the officials, some weird stuff. I thought it was a bad spot. I don't get it. I don't see how you look at the replay and not change the spot on that one. But how about the Texans, Tom, actually running a quarterback sneak? What is a quarterback sneak again? Can you explain how that works?
A quarterback sneak is when the quarterback takes the snap and decides to run the ball for a short amount to get a first down. And which, again, if we were saving these up for this playoff game, I loved it. This is something that the Texans did not do all season long. I didn't understand it. I get player safety, but for me, I feel like CJ is a big enough guy. If all these other quarterbacks can sneak for 1 yard, how many 4th and 1s have they had all the season long where they tried something, quirky or tried to run Mixon at a front that was really strong and didn't get it? And here, hand the ball to CJ, let him do his thing, and it was great.
Mixon at this point just takes over the football game the last couple of drives. 14 plays, 13 straight runs. Mixon barrels in for the touchdown. After that awful start for the run game, Tom, Mixon, all of a sudden, you look up, 26 carries, 106 yards. And let me just say, I don't really, like Josh says, thrilled with the effort from the offensive line. But even in a win, they continue to slip up. Not sure how to begin to fix this. If they even can, CJ has to win it in spite of them. And I don't think they were good really in the run game. I wasn't thrilled with some stuff in the pass game I'm going to get to, but what did you think of the offensive line?
So I really feel like this recipe that the Texans had today could be a recipe for success going forward. I don't know that we'll see it again. Early on, they realized that running up against this front was going to be very difficult. They weren't having much success. So then they just let CJ do his thing. And quick hitters, I think those are phenomenal, like extensions of the run. The broadcast had a, and this was a Herbert thing, but I think it works for CJ as well. They talked about him throwing, and it was almost like a handoff, quick, decisive, right on the hands, really simple. I feel like the Texans can do a lot of the same things. And then late in the game, when you need to salt away the game, then you come back and hammer the run game hard, just like the Texans did when a team is gassed. They've been chasing you all day long. They don't want to block anymore. And you open up creases that weren't there earlier in the game. And like you said, halftime, there was no way that you thought that Joe Mixon was going to have a 100-yard game. End of the game, he's looking at 109 yards. And I really, really thought that was a really smart move to let CJ kind of pass to open up the run and then get out in front and then use the run to salt away clock. To me, it's a formula that we haven't seen all season that I think they should really think about trying to implement more of, because I think they can do it.
Yeah, and let me just point out, like, it wasn't all Mixon there that those two drives, but there were too many plays where Mixon's dodging a guy in the backfield, having to make, chicken, whatever out of chicken, whatever, the old saying, but it was not always pretty. And look, the offensive line, Titus was terrible. I talked about it before. I think he had a couple of penalties. Was it 2 penalties, Tom, that Titus had? He had 2 penalties. He also got beat on that bad stunt with him and Titus. And I kind of blame him on that stunt where he gets beat and Stroud gets sacked. There's another play where Stroud's running for his life. I can't remember if he got sacked or not, but Titus just, did not handle his man at all. And this is a guy that should be able to pass block as a tackle. That's mostly what you worry about, Titus, at right tackle is pass blocking, which he should be able to handle even easier at the guard position. And this certainly is as big as he is. And I don't think his lateral quickness is an issue when you go inside. It's more of an issue when you go outside. So I didn't get that. Titus has just got to be way better. Blake Fisher picked up the penalty, which was frustrating because, it's just these penalties are killers. Laramie got beat on a sack. I mean, I'm having to name too many things where this offensive line makes mistakes. And, they could have a couple of mistakes. You're going to have a couple of mistakes a game. It's just, if I'm rattling off like 5 or 10, like off the top of my head without even I'm not even looking at notes right now. I'm just rattling it off. That's how bad it is, Tom.
I mean, like you said, they're going to have mistakes. I think from a standpoint of where the Texans were offensively, like with their offensive line to where they are now, I'm okay with it. Like Titus made some good plays too. There was a play that they talked about that they hit Nico Collins out in the flat. Titus was out in front. And if the Chargers don't make a great play to trip up Nico Collins, Titus has got the block and Nico's down the sideline for probably, a huge gain, touchdown, whatever. And, they were laughing it up, having a good, chuckle about the play that almost was because Titus was where he needed to be. I think Titus opened up some holes there was one run that Joe Mixon had where the line parted perfectly. He went in between Laramie and Titus, and I think it was like 8 or 9 yards. Those are plays that I think that will go a long way towards this team being really good. And they are going to make mistakes. Titus would tell you he's probably still not good being a guard, even though he's just an athlete. I think shifting to your right as a tackle, as a right tackle, as opposed to shifting to your left as a left guard is probably a natural for him. And you see it on plays. So if they can just be decent, I don't need them to be great, just be decent. This team can go score points. This defense will do their job.
Yeah. And you said, hey, Titus made some good plays too. Well, as an offensive lineman, that's not good enough. I need you to be good like 99% of the time. I'm sorry. This is like, I'm trying to think of what the equivalent of is in another sport. It's like a hockey goalie. Well, he was great except for those 3 goals that he gave up for that 10 seconds of the game. Well, that's it. That's the game right there. The 10 seconds that you gave up the 3 goals cost you the game. So, I mean, luckily the defense just was all world and helped the offense out. Luckily, Stroud's fantastic, made the incredible, play that we will never forget, like one of the all-time Texans plays on that fumble and the quarterback fumble and all that. And luckily you got Nico and you got Joe Mixon. And that, I guess, brings me to the MVP. And by the way, should mention, Derek Stingley, yada, 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 another interception, cherry on top, all pro is all pro. Who is your Texans MVP? And this is a tough one for you, Tom. We got some candidates. We already mentioned Mixon over 100 yards and a touchdown. The big plays at the end of the game. Nico, 122 yards and a touchdown. Nico is Nico. Maybe you like CJ Stroud, over 300 yards in passing and running. He was doing it all, despite, the interceptions and whatever. Or Derek Stingley, 2 interceptions, the 4th down play. Who's your MVP? This is a toughie.
Honestly, if I could give and I know it's a cop out to give like a group award, it's the D line for me. Will Anderson, Daniil Hunter, Denico Autry, Foley, Fadakasi, like all of these guys, Mario Edwards, all of these guys played phenomenal. And Justin Herbert had no time. Like they were in his hip all day long. I think that had a lot to do with a lot of the interceptions. He had to force throws that he normally doesn't force.
There were 4 sacks. Do you know how many hurries there were? Did you ever see that stat?
I didn't, but I got to imagine that number's huge. The Texans lead the league in hurries. So I got to imagine that number was huge. And to me, for a quarterback like Justin Herbert, that's not mobile, to get him off his spot is to make him uncomfortable is how you win. So as great as the secondary was with Kamari and Stingley, I just feel like the D-line just won the day for me. And I hate that I can't give you CJ Stroud or Nico Collins because their stat line is worthy too. And we haven't given CJ any love all season because we've always gotten great plays from somewhere else. This was probably one of his most complete games with legs and throwing. I know he threw the picks, but I feel like quarterbacks are going to do that when you go up against elite defenses. And the Chargers were the number one defense, point scoring defense in the league. I understand it. So to me, the D-line won the day for me.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was going to do a cop out too, but I was just going to say, give it to the whole defense. I mean, but you make a good point with the D-line because there were 4 interceptions, and I don't know what 2 or 3 of those you got to give to the defensive line. Give them credit. I don't think the one that he threw to Lassiter was on the D-line. I think that was just Herbert making a bad decision, but at least a couple of those interceptions you could put on the Murray pick 6 for sure. The Stingley's too. I don't know, but I mean, I love what the secondary did. I mean, outside of Bullock's one mistake, they were pretty good. The linebackers were fine. They didn't seem to make like the huge plays outside of, I remember the Aziz hit in the backfield that was big that set up the 4th down. But yeah, you could. I'm fine with the D-line, but I could include the whole defense because the secondary was so good.
Yeah. I mean, when you needed the guys to make a play, because the Chargers had all the momentum in the first quarter, and if either one of those scores is a touchdown, I think it's a totally different game for them. I think it's a totally different game for us. And the fact that they kept it within a 1-score game just gave the Texans time to figure it out offensively. And then they just kept the pedal to the metal the entire game. They were just really relentless getting to Justin Herbert, which I don't think anybody, not national, not local, I don't think anybody saw this Texans defense being at Justin Herbert the way they were.
A lot of trash talk, from not the Chargers, the national guys were talking trash on the Texans, it seemed like this week. And I don't know why anybody cares what Rex Ryan has to say. He's not exactly the voice of reason ever, but there were people just not counting the Texans as even having a chance in this game. And I don't have any problem with you saying that we think the Chargers are going to win the game after what you've seen from the Texans recently and after what you've seen from the Chargers. But I never thought that this was just going to be, well, the Chargers, you got to just, they're going to dominate, blow the the Texans have played good this year. Their defense has played really good this year. We've seen them have 5 interceptions against, one of the best teams in the NFL and the Lions at home. We've seen them have, what was that, 8 sacks or something? Wasn't that against the Titans? And they still lost it, but when the defensive issue, particularly in that game, but it's just, we knew they were going to show up. So was I upset about it? Not really. Cause I kind of felt like, hey, the Texans needed like a little push in the back. I like the bulletin board material against the Texans. I felt like it was going to help them.
I agree with you 100%. On the bullpen, we said the exact same thing. Said, give the Texans all the bulletin board material you can. Famously last year, they told CJ Stroud on the Pat McAfee show, you got no shot. And he said, okay. And he balled out. And when Rex Ryan said that the Chargers had a bye week, I said, okay. Every time y'all do this with Houston, no matter the sport, anytime you come for Houston like that, the Astros famously started this whole thing. It's worked out pretty good for Houston. So I look forward to them doing the exact same thing next week with whoever the Texans get. Well, somebody else got another bye. I really hope Rex Ryan doubles down. I look forward to it.
I know a lot of you Texans fans maybe don't care about the Houston Oilers, maybe don't care about the history. Maybe you're just ticked off at the Adams family because of the daughter and what she's done up there. But, it was a huge deal. It was a real moment in time, the Houston Oilers back in the late 70s. And the Texans are looking for that win in their history that is equivalent to the win that the Oilers had back in 1979. And earlier this week, I put up one of my favorite interviews. A few years ago, I think it's about 5 or 6 years ago now, I spoke to Vernon Perry. And remember, it was 45 years ago last week that the Houston Oilers went into San Diego. Not a home game. They go into San Diego, and Vernon Perry basically puts the Texans on his back. He was not drafted, Tom. The guy was not drafted. You want to hear this interview because this is a great story. He was not drafted. The Texans had 4 interceptions today. Vernon Perry against Dan Fouts, Hall of Famer Dan Fouts, had 4 interceptions. And we talked about the blocked extra point. He had a blocked field goal. And that blocked field goal set up a field goal, and they won the game by a field goal to beat the Chargers. And guess what? Think about this. Imagine if the Texans going into this game had no CJ Stroud, no Joe Mixon, and no Nico Collins. Well, the Oilers had no Dan Pastorini, their quarterback. They didn't have Earl Campbell, Hall of Fame running back, and they didn't have their best wide receiver in Kenny Burrow. So it's like the big three were all down. One guy puts the team on his back. And by the way, also, you talk about gutsy performances in playoff games. In that game, Earl Campbell was hurt. Rob Carpenter, the backup, was on crutches the night before. He was going up and down stairs with the crutches side by side. He couldn't even go up straight up. His ankle was so bad, he had to go up and down stairs side by side. And then he goes and he has 90 yards rushing and receiving that game. But go back. I mean, I would beg of you. I mean, you might have looked at it and you're like, who is this guy? Why do I? It's maybe the greatest upset in NFL playoff history. It's absolutely the most unlikely performance, unlikely hero of all, Vernon Perry, who also we talked about in the interview. The guy it wasn't just that. He had an interception the next week. First play or first drive, he picks off the Steelers, Steel Curtain Steelers with Terry Bradshaw and won 4 Super Bowls. And that would be their 4th of 4 Super Bowls that year. He picks him off and runs it back for a pick 6, 75 yards. After having the 4 interceptions last week, he had an interception the week before. He had 6 interceptions in 3 weeks. It's without a doubt the greatest defensive back playoff performance ever. So I asked Tom for people to go back and look at that interview. It's earlier this week. Just look in YouTube. If you're on the podcast, go look at an audio if you haven't. But it's a great interview.
It was definitely before my time. I know there's a couple generations that are gonna be like, "What are you talking about?" I'm an Oiler fan from the early '90s, but definitely don't track back that far. I'll have to go check it out and see what happened. I think a lot of Oilers fans that are my age would tell you that Oilers Buffalo Bills game, which we will not talk about, is probably the greatest upset of all time.
Well, it wasn't an upset except the fact that they were down 35-3 and they came back. But they came back at home, and Bills they were in the midst of a run where they go to 4 Super Bowls. They didn't win them, but they go to them. Denico, by the way, in the postgame said he was pretty upset before the blocked extra point, but heard the thump and then saw them returning the ball and was a little less upset. I would imagine so.
I can't blame him. You definitely got your foot on these guys' neck, and the last thing you want to do is give them a quick score, and that's what happened. So I could understand his frustration.
Any final thoughts? What do you need to see from this team different than we saw this week? I mean, the defense, just the same stuff. It's what else do you need to see?
I think Denico would tell you first and foremost, they have to protect the football. They had 4 turnovers today, I think. And you can't do that and win football games. This was an exceptional game on all fronts. And I think the first and foremost you would say is, look, they've got to be better. The other thing that I think for a lot of people, which I thought was crazy that they said in the broadcast. So the last time the Chargers had won a playoff game was 2018. Do you know who they beat in 2018 to win a playoff game? The Baltimore Ravens, led by the now probable MVP winner, Lamar Jackson. So Lamar Jackson in 2018 is still trying to get to the top of the mountain. I think the fact that, 6 years later, here's this guy, he's pretty much there. And, we look at CJ Stroud and want him to be this great dude immediately. And it takes time. Josh Allen, no different. Everybody wants everybody to be like Patrick Mahomes, but that guy's just a special dude. I think this Texans team is in a great spot. I really feel like whoever they match up with, it's going to be a great game. Their defense, as long as that travels, you've always got a shot. And I'm really proud of this football team. A lot of people were cautiously optimistic that the Texans would show up because they've been disappointed these last 3, 4, 5 weeks, whatever. They didn't finish the season particularly well. But if you listen to Joe Mixon, if you listen to some of these guys talk, they realize that it's the playoffs are 0-0 and you got to get 4 wins, and they're trying to get 4 wins. And I really hope they can really make a run to, ignite this fan base, because I thought NRG was loud today. Like, listen on the broadcast, I thought it was fantastic. And I really feel like Houston is a football town at its core, and they just really want a football team to be good so bad. And they're really close.
What would also help is, how about an Ohio State national championship win? Because I think it might have helped CJ to get a little bit pumped up before this one when Ohio State wins a game. So I know Longhorn fans aren't going to like hearing this, but as a Texan fan, give me some of that, because CJ needs the little push there. Also, no Kurt Hinish, but props to his brother, who goes on to play in the national championship for Notre Dame. So maybe if you want to root for Hinish, you don't like Ohio State, you don't like CJ's team, you go root for Hinish. So those two guys, I'm sure, are going to have maybe a little side bet on this particular game. But I don't know if you know the story, Tom. Kurt Hinish, his brother's at Notre Dame. He's a defensive guy. This is a tough family. Kurt Hinish's dad, their dad, has had 7 bouts with cancer. This guy has had 7 bouts with cancer. At one point he had cancer and he was like getting treated. He's a construction worker. He was doing construction work at the same time, and he was lifting weights all in the same day. Like that was like his routine or whatever. So that family is pretty tough. Just best of luck to the Hinish family and Notre Dame in that game. But, as a Texan fan, we got to root for Ohio State, because I want him charged up going up against the Chiefs. And by the way, CJ Stroud played up in cold weather in Ohio State. Texans are going on the road, right, Tom? Pretty much. They're going on the road this next game. It's going to be cold. I think it's going to be cold wherever they go. So, like, CJ Stroud's got to perform in cold weather. We have not seen him do that much. He struggled in New York when they played the Jets. He struggled in Baltimore in the playoffs last year in the cold. The Texans, for them to win, CJ's got to be better in this cold weather. And you talked about turnovers. You're fumbling in perfect weather against San Diego. You can't be fumbling. You got to be holding the ball even tighter. And whatever weather the weather they're facing this coming week going to be much different than what they face today.
Absolutely. Perfect point to make. This is the next big test for CJ and the Texans, is to go into one of these hostile environments and get a win. They've proven they can win in the friendly confines of NRG. To be able to go to Pittsburgh or Kansas City or Buffalo or wherever the case may be, it would be big. So you're 100% right. I think every other team that's in the playoffs right now on the AFC is a cold weather team, whether it's Denver, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, or KC. So I really, really hope they figure that out, because that's not changing. Those teams are all really good, and they're going to stay really good. So why not get it done now?
I should also mention, I nearly forgot about this. Jared Patterson, Notre Dame guy, snapping the ball to CJ Stroud, Ohio State. Guys, when the game's over with, we need to be on the same page, okay? So good luck to those guys. By the way, Tom's at Third Coast. Tom, don't forget to check out his show with James Roy on the Bullpen podcast. And on Tuesday, I'm going to post a show talking Rockets with analyst Frank with Rockets Chop Shop. I'd mentioned him last week, but he was a little bit under the weather. But the big thing, Tom, is we got another week. We get to do this thing one more week. Let's keep it rolling.
Yes, sir. I'm not ready to stop.
All right, go Texans. Let's do it.
You're listening to Houston Sports Talk.
Hey, you can support the show by subscribing on YouTube and commenting on the videos. Listen to Houston Sports Talk on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, and Google. Don't forget to tell a friend and share our show on social media. Spread the word, everybody. Thanks for listening.